CAPSI podcast series, Conversations on African Philanthropy.
Welcome yet to another episode on Conversations on African Philanthropy with me, Prof Moyo, the Director of the Center on African Philanthropy and Social Investment at the Wits Business School in Johannesburg, South Africa. I'm so excited to be joined by Jeremy Maarman. Jeremy is with the Initiative for Community Advancement. But Jeremy, before we get to talk about the work that you do, I remember whether it was in 2021 at the height of COVID, CAPSI and a variety of institutions were holding their second African Philanthropy Conference. And we were one of the very first few people that we brought to speak on community philanthropy, and you served in one of the parallel sessions. But we brought you back in 2022 again to talk about the same issues. We are going to our 5th conference in Victoria Falls. I just want us to talk a bit about, the value of platforms such as the African Philanthropy, conference. But we have just also come out of a 3-day conference or convening where the partners of the Ford Foundation have also come together. I mean, my counting could be that there were more than 200 people in that room. What is the value of these platforms and how have they worked for you in the last couple of years?
Becky, thank you for having me. I think firstly, I just wanted to say that this is an extreme honor to be here. The value of these kinds of platforms, for me personally, what I tend to tell people is that if you really knew where I come from, you'd understand that I actually have no right to even be here, right? So I come from a very, very small place on the west coast of the Western Cape. So when people think Western Cape, they think Cape Town, but for me it's even 2 hours down, right?
Yeah.
So, but these platforms, what they do give you is actually one, there's a lot that one can get by just being confident in telling the story of yourself, telling the story of the work that you're doing, and of the people that you are supporting whilst you're doing this work. So I do think that there's a lot of benefit in being able to articulate more clearer the work that you're doing. And you wouldn't understand even something as simple as you're writing, for example, for a funding proposal, that you having spoken on platforms, you having been to a conference, having to articulate your work as you're writing these proposals, you kind of even see how you're framing this work are changing. Yeah. So I do think these platforms are very helpful in making you think even deeper about what it is that you do and the big why. Yeah. So that is for me the big value of these kind of platforms, from podcasts to coming to university, to CAPSI here and learning from you guys. Yeah. And then of course, maybe I should say this too, it's one thing to know something, but it's another thing to do something after you've learned something. So I've really been very deliberate about going back to my rural place and actually implementing the things that guys like you so graciously share with someone like me. Yeah.
And it's very important that we actually say those things, because a lot of times different institutions have different interpretations of how to utilize spaces. And at times investing in these spaces, like you say, one, it builds your confidence. Second, it frames, how to put things together, whether it's a funding proposal or how you are reporting on your work. But also for me, and I don't know whether this is true for you, when I go to these platforms, I actually realize that I disabuse myself of the notion of there's the donor, for example, if we're talking about fundraising, and there's the recipient. Correct. We end up, in most cases, sharing the same space, almost same wavelength. Yeah. And we have more opportunities of discussing informally about opportunities than if we were to do it in a formal way. So I always also use those platforms as ways of connecting, networking, but also building relations. I always say this because I also teach on fundraising, that fundraising starts with friend raising. And so where do we get friends other than in these platforms? But I was saying this because I wanted us to, maybe, I wouldn't let this opportunity go. You have just come out of this 3-day, intensive convening with so many people coming from so many sectors representing different constituencies with different interests.
Yeah.
What are the 2 or 3 takeaway points for you?
Thanks for that. Luckily, it's fresh in my mind. It's just come from it. And so 2 or 3 things. I think the first thing is that I've realized after day 1 that there's a lot of people in this country. In fact, there's a lot of people in the continent, because 4 did bring together people from a number of countries. There's a lot of people doing really, really amazing work with a lot of passion. So one thing that I can say from this convening of these past 3 days is giving me a greater appreciation for the fact that there are people in our communities. There are activists, there are people running nonprofits at the community level that are really doing important work, doing it from the heart. So there's the first takeaway. Now, what flows out of that takeaway for me is the fact that you can only do things from the heart for so long. There's a moment during the past 3 days where it really dawned on me that in our space, we kind of need a different approach, even a bit. We need a different kind of, almost a more sophisticated way of going about the very things that we are doing.
Yeah.
So the approaches that we've used in the past has its place, and we're going to continue doing things like we've always done them from an activist point of view. But at the same time, as this world is shifting, we are having to change our language. We are having to change our way of thinking about change. And I kind of realize that we are not on the same page there yet, right? So we can kind of identify what the issues are very clearly and articulate it really well. But I got a sense that it becomes difficult when we having to come up with solutions. Kind of saying, so what would be different if these things weren't there anymore?
Yeah.
Now it takes me to a point that you made in a webinar recently, where you said that you've been at a gathering like this about 20 years ago. Why are we still saying the same thing?
Yeah.
So that is something that really stuck with me.
Yeah.
That we keep doing these things, and it's almost like we're doing the same things over and over, but we're expecting a different result, which is, I suppose, what is said to be the definition of insanity, right?
Insanity, yeah.
So those 2 takeaways. I think we need a bit of a different approach. We need nuanced approaches, I suppose, what I should be saying, not just the same. If you have a hammer, then every problem would be a nail. So that is kind of the second takeaway. There's heart, but we need to change our tact.
Yeah.
Thirdly, I would say, from a fundraising perspective, from a resourcing of the work perspective, I think there's a lot of shifting that needs to happen to the community level, and I'm sure our conversation will go there.
Yeah.
But the final session that I was in today, we were literally talking about resource mobilization, and I was telling colleagues there that when we talk resource mobilization, we should not forget that the people that give the most on the African continent are people that can hardly afford to give, but they do.
Yeah.
Because people give from a place of wanting the place where they stay to be better for the people that are around them. So the biggest takeaway, the third one, is that philanthropy is happening around us at the grassroots level on the daily.
Yeah.
It is not being written about enough.
Yeah.
It is not being... So for example, someone told the story of how her mother has been giving kids money for school, buying school clothing for youngsters, but she's never written about. We'll write about the Mackenzie Scotts of the world, which we should, but we should also find the gems which are in our communities, and this is what CAPSI is doing. I'm really excited about that. But that's kind of the 3 big takeaways for me of this week.
Fascinating, because I think we're getting somewhere with the narratives on African philanthropy, because you see what we just said about the people in the continent, especially those that are probably seen to be poor and etc., actually give a lot. In fact, we have always been saying this, but we need a formula to say it properly. That if you look at what a poor person gives, and they give on a day-to-day basis, they probably give close to 99% of what they have, compared to a high net worth individual who probably gives at least maybe a percentage or 2% of what they actually have. And so in reality, if you look into that perspective, then it means poor people actually give more than
Correct.
the rich.
For sure.
They give more than the rich. It's just that we are focusing on the numbers. But if you focus on what people own and what they give, the poor people give more than what the rich currently. So I'm sure that in the near future, we will have a proper way of articulating this so that it doesn't seem to be an attack on the high net worth individuals.
I think so. Just to speak to that point, and I agree with you. I again, always one needs to be so careful in this world that we're living in and what you say and how people are able to often kind of misconstrue even what you're trying to bring across.
Yeah.
But just to say that giving from a high net worth perspective is conscious giving, right? Meaning that if a high net worth individual gives, they might be advised to give and how to give, through what financial mechanisms they should be using to give. So if a pledge is made, for example, that high net worth individual knows there's a reason to do that because there's a return in some way, right?
Yeah.
So that's giving from that perspective. But it's different at the community level. At the community level, giving is because we all live together. We are seeing poverty, destitution around us.
Yeah.
Now, as human beings, we understand that, I think it's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, right? And I think at the community level, that is where people understand this even more, because if the kid down the street don't have food, potentially is that kid could become a problem for people in this community. So those things are from a costing point of view. I'm sure in future we'll be able to make those calculations, and I think they should be made.
Yeah, and then let's talk politics and philanthropy. We just came out of an election in this country with the result that has kind of sent messages to the ruling party, but also to the opposition parties. With the work that you do at a deep rural community level, whether it's in the rural areas, peri-urban, urban areas, what are the implications of the current political environment to the work or the communities that you interface with?
I think, so firstly, let me say that politics is not something that I dabble myself too much into. My late uncle used to say, you need to worry about politics because politics worry about you.
Yeah,
right?
it affects you.
It affects you whether you want it to or not. Now, but to say at the community, so I'm from the Western Cape. So one thing that we know in the Western Cape is, or what communities in the Western Cape are aware of, is there's a level of service delivery that for them is potentially not even good.
Yeah.
What people that don't live in the Western Cape know, when they visit the Western Cape, they can see just from an infrastructure point of view how different and potentially better the Western Cape might be.
Yeah.
So at the community level, I think there's a lot of issues in the Western Cape already around the influx of people moving into the area. There's a lot of very unsavory comments, unsavory narratives that are floating around. And some political parties, even during this campaign period, have not made some of the best and some of the soundest comments on the issue of people moving into the Western Cape, whether they documented or not. So those have been made. But the reality is, Becky, what I always want to get across is that whatever happens at the national level affects life of a person that lives in a home, in a street, in a ward somewhere around this country. So people should actually pay more attention. I don't think ordinary citizens have been paying a lot of attention to the national political landscape. People tend to really just think about their little world. And especially if you live in a small town, the conditions in that town is your world. If you don't move around, you don't understand the implications of political decisions, of political movements that are being formed around you. So I think more so than before, this is the first time where I really think, almost like pre-1994, where people will actually now start paying attention. This government of national unity, as it is called, of course, will make people look differently. You know, gone are the days of Parliament being excited purely because the Red Berets were causing havoc. People will actually now start paying attention because they will realize that things have changed drastically as a result of these elections. The magnitude of this, the extent of this might be felt in 2 years' time with the local government elections. But I think people will start paying attention.
So, and for us, of course, in the study of philanthropy and the non-profit sector, we would talk about, maybe the social origins theory, where you look at the nature of government and whether that nature of government creates opportunities for a large role to be played by the non-profit sector or not. And from what you have just said, philanthropy could be confused that the Western Cape looks organized and it looks so developed, and therefore there's no need for resources to be channeled there. Meanwhile, you really miss a big opportunity about that. And so the reason why I was saying let's talk about politics and philanthropy is because of that very reason about theories around the emergence of the non-profit sector or philanthropy and how the particular state or nature of a state attracts or shapes a particular form of the non-profit sector. So let's talk maybe about the initiative for community advancement. Maybe let's start from the beginning. What is this emergency? What does it stand for? And what are the key areas that you are focused on?
Thanks for that. So let's start at the beginning. So back in 2010, we had the Soccer World Cup, and towards the end of that year, I was at that time still working for a non-profit organization with farm kids. So I was working with kids that live on farms, and we by virtue of a common donor, a number of organizations in South Africa were able to bring together kids, male and female, to what we called a managing diversity camp. At the time, we called the camp Bopasia Corner. And so we had this camp, and towards the end of that week, so the camp really was about getting young people from various backgrounds, various place, class, and so forth, to races, to come together for a week, sleep together, live together, play soccer together, World Cup style, form new teams, girls and boys in the same team, to really encourage people to be together, learn from each other, and see that we are more the same than we are different. So that is called the managing diversity work. So that was back in 2010. So we decided after that week that it made sense for us as partners, organizations now, to keep having a conversation together, working with young people to advance, to continue advancing the work. So we decided to have an annual conference of these youth-led organizations. We had the first one in a place called Bethlehem in the Free State, and then we had subsequent ones all over the country. At the time, this was still an informal. This now became an informal network of youth-led organizations. Now, by 2015, we for the first time made a decision to actually register this network as an independent organization. We called this network the South African Youth Leaders Network, and the focus of it was in building social cohesion all over the country, especially amongst young people, and in active citizenship, social cohesion and active citizenship. So 2015, we worked as a network for about 3 years until 2018. Now in 2018, we were then confronted with some very interesting things. I mean, you know networks well, and one of the biggest things were around the resourcing of the network members, where the expectation almost became that the secretariat should help the members with fundraising and raise money on behalf of. So those things became quite a bit of a challenge. But because this network was working on social cohesion efforts and active citizenship, a decision was made following an external evaluation that was done. A decision was made by the membership to disband the network, but to become what is called a community foundation. Tagging along this issue of focusing on active citizenship. So we decided to become a community foundation in 2018, and the community foundation is called the Initiative for Community Advancement. Now some might and others might not know what community foundations do, but essentially what community foundations do is they encourage local community philanthropy. So since 2018 until now, we've been very deliberate about building a community foundation, essentially very much in what I call the classic community foundation, the one borrowed from the US and what we see in Europe, where we're building this organization that raises money locally, that create mechanisms for local people to invest. But then using the investment from local people to channel resources, the funds that were raised locally, to move that money into projects and organizations at the community level. So it's kind of getting people to invest into the cause that they care about. So that is kind of the history of the Community Foundation, having transformed from a national network into what is now a community foundation. And we've also, Becky, decided to operate this community foundation in a particular place, which is the Bergrivier municipal area on the west coast of Cape Town. And why a place-based community foundation? Because a place, a geographic place gives people a belonging. So I'm from here. So if you can work on the heartstrings of people that live here and get them to invest into the causes for their hometowns where they're from, we thought that's a good idea. So we've been doing that actively for the past since 2018.
So maybe before we get to the programs, because I was about to talk about the programs, but you brought the issue of community foundations, which is fascinating because, you know, unless you say it, people might not actually pick that you are treating yourselves as a community foundation. Was there a deliberate and conscious decision not to call yourselves a community foundation in writing? Because the history of community foundations, as you know, like you said, it's a model that was started in the US in 1914, thereabout. But it comes with all sorts of features. You know, you must have an endowment, you must have a local board, you must do this, you must raise resources, etc. And the experiments that were done in this country on community foundations, they seemed not to resonate with the local context. And so of the 10 initial community foundations that were started, I think it's 1997, thereabout, only a few of them. I think there's Utungulu and the West Coast and the Community Foundation for Rustenburg that are still kind of operating. So was there a conscious decision to not deliberately put that on paper, but in operation and practice, you are a community foundation?
That's such an interesting question. No one has ever asked me that. Why not have community foundation in a name? I think there's a practical reason for that. I would have loved to have called the community foundation the Bergrivier Community Foundation. But just a bit of history. So what happened in our area, so I used to work for a community foundation, one of the ones that you just referred to. It's called the West Coast Community Foundation, based in Malmesbury, also in the West Coast. Now, at some time, we were doing work in this municipal area called Bergrivier, and there was a particular gentleman who we worked with. And we were getting some money from the Department of Health, I think at the time, to move, Department of Social Development, apologies. So Social Development were giving the West Coast Community Foundation funding to buy food stuff for soup kitchens in the Bergrivier municipal area. Now this gentleman, being the chairperson of this organization that has the soup kitchen, he thought, why are we getting food stuff from the Department of Social Development via the West Coast Community Foundation? So he came up with this very fancy idea to register the Bergrivier Community Foundation. Simply because he thought if he registered this thing as Bergrivier Community Foundation, then he could speak to the government and say, we don't want to use West Coast Community Foundation anymore, use us, we are Bergrivier. But there's not an organization. That organization has never operated, has never functioned. Coincidentally, the gentleman is now a councillor at the municipality. In the Executive Mayoral Commission Committee, I think he is now, he was before for sure. So we couldn't use for practical and legal reasons. We couldn't name the community foundation the Bergrivier Community Foundation. So we named it the Initiative for Community Advancement.
And of course, I think, before we move to the programs again, one of the interesting things about community foundations, and you spoke about geography as an important way in which makes people belong. But at times there's also community of interest.
For sure.
And how do you deal with that, especially in a geographic location where you are raising resources from there, etc. And earlier on you spoke about, huge waves of migration into communities, and I'm sure there are people who have migrated into your community, and in all intents and purposes they may not be seen as belonging in terms of geography, but in terms of community of interest, those people and others outside your community could. So how have you dealt with the concept of community of interest within the framework of community philanthropy or community foundations.
Great. So the way that we've dealt with that, and I think this is really important to talk about, and what I'm quite deliberate about in building this community foundation is the piece on geography, this having a place-based community foundation. How we deal with the issues or the issue-focused piece or community of interest piece is that we build in the community foundation. We build what we call community affiliated funds.
Okay.
Now, these affiliated funds would respond to various issues in our community. Like, for example, so we have an education fund through which we give high school scholarships. We have a gender-based violence response fund, call it the WHOOP funds. In Afrikaans, it's WHOOP. English is hope. So the WHOOP funds is really about giving hope and inspiring hope, giving hope to victims of violence, whoever these victims might be. So we build these community-affiliated funds within the community foundation that allows for people who are interested in something particularly to still find resonance and a place for their interest within the community foundation. So the community foundation essentially becomes almost the container that holds all the issues of the Bergrivier, the place. But within this place, there are various issues, and what we create within this community foundation are these mechanisms through which for people to respond to. So, for example, we have the GBV response fund. During the COVID-19 pandemic, you were referring to this earlier on, we started even the COVID-19 response fund. And during that time, we funded a soup kitchen which also were like a Meals on Wheels program. The district municipality, the West Coast District Municipality during 2020, actually asked via the community foundation, we were able to move food parcels. Through the community foundation, we were able to take to various farms in one of the wards in that municipal area. So there is a way that we're giving expression to people who are interested in something, but they feel the place-based element doesn't attract them, but the issue focus could be attractive to them.
So for me, I'm excited to be hearing this because this could serve as some kind of a masterclass even for our students. Because you see, the concept of community foundations has really been problematic for most people to interpret because it's still seen as an American model. But here we are speaking about something that is localized and something that you are running with the colleagues and the community. What has been I would say maybe the response or the reaction or the reception from the community? And how is the community reflected in the foundation?
I like that. So how is the community reflected in the foundation? That is for me the most exciting part of what a community foundation offers, right? So I was talking about the community affiliated funds, for example. We do what we call participatory grant making. So each of our community affiliated funds have what we call a fund committee. Now, these are ordinary citizens. They are people from the community, that are essentially on a grant allocations committee for that issue that we're raising funds for. So when we do an open call for proposals through our community foundation, the people that actually sits and adjudicates and listens are sitting on the panels when people are making submissions or doing interviews for grants. Those are people from the community. The panelists are people from the community. Now, I always say, so we have a youth fund, it's called the Bergrivier Youth Fund. And I always say that it was interesting last year, we had a call for proposals for organizations in our municipal area that worked with young people, where the youth fund actually advertised that these organizations could apply for a catalytic grant that they could use for fundraising purposes. Right? Now, it was interesting, during the process of adjudicating and looking through the applications and doing the interviews, some of the remarks of the young people who are committee members were, we were the ones who were standing in the sun, selling vetkoek, selling boerewors rolls. We were the ones at the community market. We have what we call community markets in the youth fund, where they actually have stalls and they sell things. So they're not making these decisions willy-nilly. So one of the applicants, for example, a fantastic project, a program that they proposed, they even said yes to them. They wanted to give them about 10,000 rands towards their fundraising efforts. But essentially what happened was this project didn't have a bank account in the name of the organization. When they sent through the documentation for the funding, the leader sent her own bank account details. And the young people said, no, we're not giving money in this way, right?
Yeah.
So it's really empowering, I think, at the community level, because people from the community are able to decide who gets the resources, who gets the money. I think that is really powerful. So the reception, I'll give you another example. Just this past Monday, we had, over the last few weeks, there were interview, a process through our education fund. So on Monday, we posted 6 new young people that are getting high school scholarships. And we posted it. I was in the conference here. And literally a half an hour or so later, I got on my phone a call from one of our big energy companies, independent power producer. They're into solar and wind energy in our area. Lady calling saying, just seeing what you guys are posting on your page, how can we play a role? How could we contribute as a company into this education fund? And I think those things, Becky, that's the future. We do need a sense. We talk about active citizenship. What is that? Is it just casting, making a cross on now 3 ballots, right? Luckily, used to be 2, now you make another cross. Is it as simple as you making 3 X's and then your responsibility ends? Or can it be more? Should it be more? I think our constitution demands it to be more. With every right you have, there's a responsibility. And a lot of that responsibility for me lies in you play as a citizen playing a role where you are. Right? So this is really what a community foundation gives people.
And of course, community foundations are at the coalface of locally led development. And as we sit here and speak today, there's a lot of conversations and narratives, initiatives that take different forms. On the one hand is Shift Power, and I'm sure as a community foundation you are part and parcel of that, because I know that the Global Fund for Community Foundations and many others have been leading on that debate. There's also, the whole issue around participatory grant making that we just spoke about, which again, takes different forms depending on who is doing it and where. And it is translated now maybe to issues like trust-based philanthropy, decolonizing philanthropy. And so you are at the center and coalface of all these debates. Now, there are all these initiatives, and one of the latest one is the locally led development, which is a function of USAID and other bilateral institutions, including major philanthropic foundations, especially from Europe and the USA. And their main argument is really about, trying to decentralize decision making, push resources to the local communities, etc., etc. And you are at the coalface. If you are looking at all these initiatives and you want to, not really advise, but you want them to do the right things, based on the experience that you have garnered over the years, what would be the 2 or 3 things that you would say these are the major considerations that you need to take into account if you are to do what is truly, truly locally led development, or in other forms, if it is shifting power or decolonizing philanthropy?
2 or 3 things. I think one everything. The beauty, I think, of South Africa is we have policies that can really help. There are some things that are not useful. But there are things that are really useful if they are followed through on, if they're done correctly, if they're being implemented in the way that they ought to. Now, one of these things, I think, at the community level, at the most local level, at the local municipality, is the integrated development plan. So each municipality, 200 plus municipalities in this country, each of them, by law, must have an integrated development plan. Now, I'm bringing this up. If you talk about locally led development, I'm bringing this up because what we are doing in our community foundation, we know the municipality has their public participation process around the IDP. Now, remember, in this IDP is where the community are given the opportunity to talk to local authority about the issues, the developmental opportunities, the needs that they want on a checklist or a wish list is what is being called now. Wish list of needs that comes from the community. Now, also by law, municipality can budget for things only if it's on the IDP. Now, immediately you should think, but this is an opportunity. From a locally led development point of view, the opportunity then lies in your ability to interrogate the IDP, finding the issues that the community identified, and responding to those issues. Now, we know that the reality, though, is that the IDP meetings are really a tick box exercise for most municipalities. IDP, the officials of the municipality, they're the ones that write up this document. They're the ones, they have these meetings. We had our NPO summit on the 19th of June, for example, where one of the participants, one of the NPO leaders actually said, I didn't even know that our IDP hearing took place in our community.
Yeah.
Where are these things being advertised? And I stood up and I said, look, the reality is the municipality did exactly what they had to do by law. They did it. If you can't fault the municipality in having done that, they did it. The reality is people don't attend those meetings. So if the viewers here, if the viewer would really check themselves and ask, if I would ask the viewer, when last have you been to your ward's IDP meeting? Most people don't even know what the IDP is. So I think if we truly talk about locally led development, this is where it needs to start. Now, how do we as a community foundation tackle the issue of officials writing this IDP? So what we do is we actually have two processes, one with community leaders and one with young people in school. What we do with community leaders is we have what we call town conferences. Now, this is almost parallel to what the municipality is doing with their public participation hearings, where we go into this community, into the wards. We have 7 wards, 9 towns. We go into these towns, and we have these town conferences asking people from this community through what we even innovated on this the town conference for it not to just be a meeting. We call it a wine and dine, right? Without alcohol, right? So wine being to complain, right? Complain and we give you a meal whilst you do. So we had literally tables set up in the community hall. People had a meal together and they could talk about issues in the community. And out of this process, we found such a wealth of opportunities for development locally, but also some of the real challenges that people are finding. What we then did after that, in each of these town conferences or wine and dine meetings, we elected a community of interest, like a smaller grouping of people, that we took through a process of writing submissions of things that was identified in those meetings, submissions that went into the IDP document. So this is a one way that we're ensuring that this is the legal route we could follow to almost force the municipality to budget for the issues at the community level. That was the one. Second one, with young people, for example, we would do what we call my town, in Afrikaans now. I need to speak Afrikaans in the show too. My dorp is my town. That project, where we go with this project into schools, into classrooms at school, asking kids, what is your dream for your town? What is your dream town? Now the kid can sketch on a piece of paper, maybe a skateboard park. But kids actually came up with some interesting things last year. They came up with things like, we need shading in front of our local clinic. We need a school for autistic children. No, we need a shelter for people that are destitute. So these things came out from the kids. What we then did out of that, the kids' sketches were, we asked a student to build scale models that we then visualized at community gatherings, shared with municipal decision makers. And the issues of the kids, the suggestions of the kids, we made sure that they also land in the IDP. So now we know over 50 submissions from the community foundations, from our interventions are now in the IDP. Right? So now if we talk about locally led development, where should development aid go? We will say, look at the IDP. Look at the IDP first, because we know that the issues of the community that we identify, we made sure that landed in the IDP.
It's fascinating. We know we have a module here at CAPSI called Working with Communities. And the reason why I said this could easily be a masterclass, I mean, this is something that I will ask our lecturers to actually utilize on that module, working with communities, because it comes down to how you engage at that local level and how you get some of these issues, like you're saying, into the policy frameworks, but also into the table for policymakers to take decisions on. Maybe, in brief, you have already started talking about your programs, but how are they packaged? I mean, just maybe if you could help us put sense to everything that you have saying. What are the programs that you are implementing? So
we work on what we call the 4 C's approach. So we have 4 C's in our community foundation. The one C is around channeling. And the channeling C is about channeling resources. One, from givers, from local people donating towards or giving towards community-affiliated funds, these mechanisms in the community foundation. But then for the community foundation to channel those funds into the non-profit organizations, community-based organizations that do the work within these communities, right? So that is the first C, where we do a lot of work around our community affiliated fund program. So that is the first C. The second C has to do with convening. So what we are finding is, as a community foundation, we have the ability to convene various stakeholders, right?
Yeah.
On the 19th of June, like I said, we had our NPO summit. We have this every year. In NPO, we bring about 40 to 50 NPO leaders together where we discuss issues of the sector within our municipal area. Another convening that is actually coming up on the 3rd of July, which is next week, is a skills summit. So in our area, in my municipal area, the Bergrivier, in our area, in the district, there's a college, there's a TVET college. It is called the West Coast College. This college has campuses. There's 5 local municipalities in the district. In 4 of the 5 municipalities, this college has a campus.
Yeah.
Except for my municipality. So there's no campus in my municipality. So we actually engage with the municipality around how do we get a college campus here? What the municipality said to us, we've always been fighting with West Coast College to actually bring a campus here. And it turns out that the one campus that could have been in our municipal area is in Atlantis in the city of Cape Town. So it's actually in Atlantis and it is not in our area.
Yeah.
So on the 3rd of June, I'm talking about our ability to convene people.
Yeah.
So on the 3rd of July, ICA, the Bergrivier municipality, and this West Coast College, we're putting together what we call a skills summit for business leaders. Because what we want to get right in the build-up to us having a campus in our area, we want to bring together leaders, industry leaders around agriculture, the mining sector, the energy companies, bring them together to talk about the job requirements and the skill shortages within their companies.
Yeah.
So that we're able to bring those courses into this college so that as we train young people from the Bergrivier at this campus, that they could be absorbed by the local economy. So these are the kind of things, Becky, that we are able to do under the C that we call the ability to convene. So that is the second one. The third one has to do with capacitating. So it's one thing to say we need to fund and bring together non-profit organizations, but it's another thing if you really look at the quality. Earlier I was talking about we need almost a different level of sophistication as we're running our very organizations.
Yeah.
So what we're doing under the third C is we talk about capacitating and building the capacity of non-profit organization leaders within our municipal area. So we have an ongoing program where we take on about 20 organizations. We have our current intake. We're doing various training programs from, of course, all the elements of organizational development. We bring experts in to sit and engage with our organization. And that's the third one, to capacitate non-profit organizations. But then we brought on a fourth one. Now the fourth one is one that is really interesting and dear to me because that one has to do, we call it to contribute. That C is to contribute. What we do there is we've seen an opportunity to engage with local businesses around their CSI, but not actually the CSI, the enterprise development component, right? So if you look at the social and labor plan of, for example, a mine and so forth, one of the things that these companies have to do is they have to invest in local businesses, right? They have to build and strengthen small businesses. So we were able to almost to articulate to one of our wind farms in our area. We said to them, we could actually bring in experts to train and capacitate small businesses. We could do that. We are not. This is not our work, but we can do that on condition that we can make a grant from money that you give us. You make a grant to those very businesses. Now there was a big. I took a big chance with that when I had the first discussion. This was in June 2023, last year. They were open to that, and we promised to move 60% of the giving into grant making. That is what we wanted to be. As a community foundation, we want to make grants. So 60% of the giving was into grant making. 40% was actually for the training component. None of the money came to the community foundation because I just wanted to get in there. Now since then, you wouldn't believe this is now that initial giving. Full disclosure was 150,000 rands. In June, we onboarded 10 small businesses. After that first intake, they came back to us, and since June, added to the 150, they've now actually given us almost R1 million to do that very work. Now that's enterprise development. This is not even what a community foundation do, but that is what we can contribute towards. So that C for us is about that. And I think there's a lot, when it comes to us as a sector, businesses have a lot of other ways to give, and most of us only go for the CSI, which is really the smallest
Or
piece. You know
grants.
this.
Or
All for
grants,
grants, and you know this better than I do. But there's a lot then as far as socioeconomic development projects, a lot then as far as ED or enterprise development projects. So that is where we've been advised to look, and it is bearing fruit at this stage.
So earlier when I asked about what has been the community's reception, so those were the positive things.
Correct.
But I know that running and setting up a community foundation also comes with lots of challenges.
Oh, man.
What have those been? I mean, if I can just throw a couple of issues there. One is that there's an expectation that you should build an endowment. There's an expectation that the funding must come from the local community. There's an expectation that the governance must reflect, people around. But, we are also operating in an environment where resources have really been declining. And so, in your case, what have been some of the challenges that have kept Jeremy awake at night?
Those ones.
Yeah, those ones that I just mentioned.
Those very ones have been those very ones has been the ones that has been keeping me awake. To be brutally honest with you, look, the reality is that so in our work we talk about horizontal giving and vertical giving, right? So and I'm under no illusion that there's always going to be proposal writing from any non-profit organization. They're going to be writing a proposal to someone outside. But the element of horizontal giving, we need to have evidence of this element right here. So what is happening is we're talking about giving having to come, not coming from outside. But we're not even proving that we can actually organize giving at the community level, right? So that has been an initial challenge for us to actually raise money at the local level. Now, so an innovative way that we've actually gone around articulating what does this look like. What does local giving, for example, look like? Is we would host local events. For example, the 8th of June, we had a community jazz evening. This is one of the hits on our calendar every year. A jazz evening where ordinary citizens, they would buy tickets to attend this event. And we see that ticket purchase as them giving towards the work. Right? Another thing we do in August every year, we have a women's high tea, where we have women and companies buying tables for women. And so those are ways that we actually showing that we can raise money at this horizontal level. But as I'm saying, this piece on the vertical, I know we're going to keep doing that. We have to. It doesn't make sense not to do that. Right? So I'm under no illusions about that, and I don't think other people should be either. So the shrinking space for giving, we're seeing this. I mean, we have news right now on important institutions that are closing down. Even in the next 2 years, one of the big ones are closing. So that's the reality. That's keeping me awake. It is not all sunshine and roses, for sure. It is not. There's not the picture that I'm trying to paint here. But what I am trying to paint here is that it does require leadership, governance structures, a board that is fully on board. So in our case, we are lucky to have board members who are really committed to the work of the Community Foundation. Our education fund, for example, one of the local dentists from our community, he is the patron of the education fund, for example, but he's also the secretary of our board. So those are ways that are getting local people to actually contribute towards this work. But those challenges, Becky, they exist, and they're going to continue to exist. But I'm brave enough, and my colleagues that I met this week, I know they are too brave enough to keep doing what needs to be done in order for us to build these sophisticated organizations that are responding to the issues of our people.
Thanks you so much, Jeremy. So, I think, we always talk about the future of community philanthropy, its role in local development, and I think yours, in many ways, is a classic example and demonstration of what philanthropy can actually do at a local level. And I think it would be good for us to come back at some point and maybe potentially even do a proper case study that would then be utilized by different universities, starting with CAPSI and many others, just to demonstrate the value of giving at a local level and how it leads to transformative development. I think an episode coming next week, I did an episode with Sean Samuels, and he was telling me about the work that you have done jointly in your community, and a lot of what you were saying really sounded like you've done some transformations at a local level. So I really appreciate you taking the time. But I also want at times, we forget to thank those that work with us.
Oh, man.
And I know you have a team that you want to probably say thank you to. I think we have a colleague here, Yolisa. I normally want to put people on the spot. Is there a mic there? Is there a mic there to? Yes, please.
Great.
Let's just hear a few words from you, Yolisa, so that just a few words about you, the work that you do. Maybe we can also have a camera turned to her.
So, hello everyone. I am Yolisa Lawrence, and I'm the program coordinator for the Community Foundation Development Program at SGS Consulting, coordinating the Community Foundation Development Program, where we support, community foundation support organizations in Southern Africa as they deepen community philanthropy and they establish the community foundations movement in their context or in their country. And in South Africa, we are the builders of the community foundations movement. And we have been supporting ICA.
Thank you. And that's
Since
the reason
its
why I
inception.
I asked you to say something, because in the last episode, we spoke to Sean, and he spoke highly about the collaboration that you guys have done in the Western Cape, and I think that's important. And thank you so much, Yolisa.
You caught me off guard.
That's why I brought her, by the way.
You're caught off guard, but you were listening here, so that's fine. But I know you wanted to, probably end by also saying something about the team and the community that you're from.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean,
so that would be your camera.
This one, Yes. Okay. Before I go there, let me just quickly talk to people.
Sure.
You asked me something that I didn't answer.
Okay.
You asked about the endowment building.
Yeah.
Now, this is really important. It's an interesting one, because people often say, but you're not a community foundation if you don't do this, that, and that, right?
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, in Africa, we are known for a couple of things. One of the things that we're really known for is marathon running, right? In my view, building a community foundation is a marathon, it is not a sprint. And we started at various points. I spoke about the 4 C's, for example. We've developed these things as part of our next 5-year strategy because we know that we need to build proof of concept. We need to be able to show people this is what we mean when we talk about a community foundation. So as things are shifting, as people are trusting us, as we've been building our reputation as a community foundation all over the continent now, we are really confident that as we will now start talking about building an endowment, people will be more open to actually listening to that conversation. Because I think the biggest problem with endowment building on the continent is that how do we justify sitting with 20 million rands in an endowment fund when the community right here is suffering?
Needs it right now.
How do we justify that?
Yeah.
So us showing what community foundations do and then we're building a legacy for the future is actually the point that I think is critical, have been critical for us, so that as we now start talking about building for the future through endowments, people will actually be open to listening to this, because we've proven what we mean with the community foundation. So that is something that I thought would be useful to respond to. Now, to the people that have been supportive of myself in this work, the first one that I have to give props to is SGS Consulting. So Sean Samuels and his team. Wherever I go, I say that we much like these kind of platforms, you need a mentor, right? You need someone that you don't want to disappoint. There's always the way I look at something. And Sean has been that person on this journey for me, that SGS has been investing so much, and I never wanted to disappoint them, right? So they've really been a strong driver to the work. So my appreciation to SGS in that regard. Others, by name, now at Ford, we have Sizwe Iswa, she's there, instrumental from my time even at West Coast Community Foundation. Mamo Moape at Mott Foundation. So people have been instrumental in supporting, giving confidence to myself to even believe that this can indeed happen on this continent. And then, of course, my team. So just recently, a very dear colleague surprised me by resigning. So I got a resignation letter from her. She's been with us for 8 years, Bianca Julius. She surprised me out of the blue. She just said, I have news for you. Kind of while you're sitting down. And when she broke the news that she's moving on, the first time ever. I mean, there's been a number of people that has come and gone, and I've always respected and appreciated everyone. But when Bianca said she's leaving, it
it hit hard.
That's what hit hard. That's what hit really hard. So appreciation to people like Bianca, Norma over the years, and others. Current team, we have Lauren. You would have met Lauren this week at the conference. Lauren Philander, really remarkable young lady. I mean, Lauren, she can do anything she really sets her mind to. I'm just blessed that she decided to do work with us at ICA. Shamel Scotsman, she just recently returned to us. She worked with us as an intern. She has an honors in psychology, decided to come and intern with us. She left, got married, and then returned. She's now back with us at ICA. Really excited to have her. We have a number of interns that come and go in our organization too, because we create these opportunities actually for people to come and learn too. So there's a lot more people. My wife, of course, I need to give a shout out to my wife who trusts me to go around and do this work. So all of that is important. I think being a grounded person, I think, is really important in this work. And I'm able to go home to a home that is a home, so that's important too.
Thank you, Jeremy. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned two names there, because normally we see them as donors, but we actually don't, give them their flowers in terms of the work that they've done in the philanthropy space. And I'm specifically talking about Vuiswa and Maarman.
Oh yeah.
Thank you for all the good work that you are doing. That was Jeremy Maarman. In fact, I almost went to talking about the last name. You told me that it means a thin man, but we're not going to talk about that.
So I'm not exactly a thin man anymore.
But you're talking about marathon. So when you're talking about the marathon, I was looking at you and thinking, this man told me that his name means a thin man, and now he's
talking about marathons, exactly.
Anyway, that was Jeremy Maarman, the Executive Director of the Initiative for Community Advancement in the Western Cape, joining us for this conversation. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the CAPSI podcast series, Conversations on African Philanthropy.